Greetings, everybody. This is SEAF Spotlight. My name is Amrit Chernpan, as a board member here with one of our most distinguished member who's recently had a lot of good news to share. But here today, very busy man, Ryan Manafe. It's a pleasure to have you. Please welcome to SEAF Spotlight.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian, for having me.
Awesome. I guess we'd love to have you introduce yourself very briefly about yourself, what your startup does, and maybe one interesting fun fact that nobody really knows about your company and yourself.
Sure. My name is Ryan Manafe. I'm originally from East Indonesia. So when people visit Indonesia, they typically spend most of their time in Jakarta and in Bali, which is located, both of them, in West Indonesia. But I'm coming from the east, and one of the island in the East Indonesia that's located in the most southern of the country is Rote Island. So I'm coming from that Rote Island. It takes like 2-3 hours flight probably from Jakarta. The startup that I'm running is Dagangang. Because I'm coming from that, rural areas. We also focus on rural areas. And as you know, in rural areas, the main needs is actually daily necessities and staple foods. So that's exactly what we provide. We provide them with daily necessities and staple foods with affordable price and reliable service. So they can get whatever they order on the same day or the day after. I think that's the summary of what we are doing. And what people would be surprised. Well, I used to be in boarding school that prepared me for a military academy, and I was accepted in military academy, to be specific, Air Force Academy, to be one of the jet fighter pilots. But then I couldn't get blessings from my parents, and now totally different. I spend my day when I'm at home at least 2 hours with my cute puppies. So from almost becoming soldiers to puppies lovers. Anyway.
That is a very interesting story. Have the military training been helpful in your startup in any way? Like, were there any links to what you do now?
Yeah. So I probably kind of got brainwashed when I was in the senior high school, in the boarding school, and on top of the typical daily subjects, they give me kind of doctrines and how I should love the country. So I think it went too much. So I really want to be a soldier. And when I couldn't make it because I couldn't get the blessing from my parents, I'm thinking of like, what can I do? And that's where I start exploring opportunities working for government. But I end up becoming a management consultant in McKinsey. And then when I see startups is growing, I see this is also another vehicle or another platform for me to do something about what I actually wanted to do back then.
I guess that leads to an interesting question, because a lot of people, especially in consulting, McKinsey's, it's quite a tough but comfortable job. I think you've really led life, especially being Asian, quite in a safe lane, doing what your parents told you to do, getting a good job, going to a nice high school and uni. I guess what really made you jump ship and say like, okay, I really need to do this startup right now?
It's pretty shallow at the beginning, because I just saw many of my friends in McKinsey quitting and built their own startups or joining startups as a founding teams. And I'm just stuck in the firm, doing day-to-day business, working like horses day by day. So, and then I was getting married back then, and I talked to my wife-to-be, now becoming my wife, that what did she think about it, about building a startup. And she said, like, if you want to do it, you have to do it now. So if things don't work, you still have time to go back to your own, to the previous career, becoming consultant or someone in a management of the company. So I took the chance, and thank God I'm still alive. The startup still survived till now.
I mean, I used to also be a consultant with LEK, and I know that many times we feel like having consulted and advised a lot of executives in other companies, we kind of know it all, or at least we feel like we know a lot. I guess all of us, once we, rubber hits the road, we actually do the job for the first time, we realize that we're so wholly unprepared. In the early days as your startup, was there stuff that you wish you had known earlier or done differently or been more prepared before you actually jumped in?
So I spent some time during my time in the firms, in the consulting firm, working on the go or no go recommendation for a company entering a market or entering a new businesses. And I answer those big questions together with a team with only 15 to 20 slides. Right? And when I built the company, when I start to build the blueprint of the operations, I did the same approach. I built like 15 to 20 slides, and I expect people can understand comprehensively right away. But end up every slide require 2 hours discussion, follow up with multiple meetings. And I think the best way to communicate, well, slide is not bad. It can be a good media or tool to start with, but then leading by example, showing them how to do it, and then let them see, let them try, and then let them, make mistakes is somehow much more effective. So I think now what I will do differently, I will still create the slides for pitching, but I think for internal communication, I better meet them, talk to them, spending 2 hours until they understand, and then do it together with them until they really get it. So I don't spend too much time creating slides, explaining to them, and then revising the slides again, and then scolding them because they don't do what I expect. Well, but it's part of the learning anyway.
Yeah, I totally understand. Been there, done that. Sometimes you just send them nothing and just talk about it. It's much easier. I guess, with Dagangang, it's such an interesting business, but from somebody who's, maybe in a different market like Thailand, where 7-Eleven are ubiquitous and people rely for their lives, it seems like from an outsider, it's like a solved problem, and you must see something different, or something must be definitely up in Indonesia that we don't know about. Can you tell us like what compelled you to start this business, and what did you see that other didn't see?
So to start with, I think you were right that when you mentioned I visited Thailand many times, and I can see that 7-Eleven is everywhere. Until I go to Chiang Mai and random places. From Chiang Mai, I travel like 2-3 hours. I still can see 7-Eleven easily. But in Indonesia, that's not the case. Probably you can easily find convenience store in the cities. But then when you start traveling outside the cities, like 1-2 hours, it's the frequency, you see that becoming, less and less. And then until you travel 4-5 hours outside the cities, you cannot see any convenience store. And on top of it, I think it's not only about convenience store, it's also about helping the traditional channels, which is the agent and resellers, who previously have to travel far from the villages to the cities to get the supplies. And I'm not sure whether other populations of Indonesia are doing this, but they do it with motorbikes, because car for us is pretty expensive. The tax charged by the government to cars is almost 40%. So if you sell a car to Indonesia, the price become double, and people still buy it, by the way. But of course, for rural people, it's something that it's not really affordable. So I think that's the main thing we are trying to solve. At the same time, I can see how the discrepancies are really obvious when I see in the Jakarta and big cities, people building startup for something that actually we don't really need it, but we have the apps for it. But in the rural areas, for the basic thing, something they need every day, something they eat and will determine whether they can stay alive or whether they can stay making money, is not solved yet. So I just see the discrepancies of a lot of people focus on the cities life, and I feel like probably the main basic problems has been solved. Meanwhile, in rural areas, there are still main things wide open, and no one is really doing it, probably because the story is not that sexy or a lot of operational challenges. But again, it's not about startup and valuation. It's about almost becoming a soldier, but I didn't make it. So yeah.
Awesome. And now you've raised, I think, over $11 million with Mount Hill Ventures and going very strong. There must be a reason why you've attracted so much support. Can you attribute where some of this success and support came from?
Of course. So, by the way, I don't know when it will be broadcasted by, but this Friday, we're going to announce the pre-B round, by the way. But I think we feel like it's not because we are coming with a super high profile and excellent background, but I think we really make things happen on the ground and we really touch people life. I still remember when I bring one of the main partners of Monsel, our lead investor of Series A, went to the rural areas where we are operating and met our end users, and he could see directly how far we are reaching outside the cities and how the impact we deliver to people. Well, it's also something that we didn't expect. Previously, we only see this is a market, no one is doing it. But now after we do it for some time, we feel like we want to do it more and we want to scale up what we do to bigger areas so more people can actually experience it.
Awesome. Well, behind every success, as much be a lot of painful moments, failures, and challenges. Do some that really come to mind? Maybe something that was an existential crisis or something very painful that you've gone through?
We started the startup 2019. For the full 2 years until early 2021, we didn't get any investment. Because again, the story is not sexy probably. People are not looking at the sectors. People are not interested whatsoever. And even that time, we consider the option to go public right away. So make the company profitable and go public right away. The reason is the condition get worsened because only after we get leads for investment, COVID happened. And there was one investor pull out the term sheet. So it hit us a lot mentally. Then we consider that option even more seriously. And then we start changing the way we do the business into more sustainable and profit-oriented business. Of course, we don't ignore the social impact that we also want to deliver. However, we feel like it's a blessing in disguise because without funding, we still survive until 2.5 years, I would say. And then the investors that back then willing to invest, but then they cancel, start to coming back. And then one of them is actually Monsel, and we wrap up our Series A. So I feel like the fact that we almost didn't get funding and we changed the way we do the business now become one of our, I feel like, strong point that attract current and potential investors in the future.
That's amazing. You survived COVID, and was there any major learnings or kind of drastic changes you needed to do to really survive this past 3 years? Because you are a startup that was born and grew during COVID. There must have been some life changing things that you had to do to survive the 3 years.
Myself and the other co-founders, so we as a founding team used to be in a kind of mindset of FOMO, so fear of missing out. So when specific trend is actually coming up, social commerce, then we kind of customize the pitching deck and then another trend is coming up, like D2C, direct to consumer. We kind of keep changing the stories until we realize, look, it's not going to happen because this is not what business model that we actually started. We reflect back, and then we start from scratch. We build again our pitching deck, and you know, end up we find our story and we find who we are, and that's exactly what we present to current and potential investors. We are a rural e-commerce. We bring daily necessities and staple foods affordable and closer to the users, and then we help people gaining more income. We help people getting what they need, and that's what we do.
Awesome. And I think you had a lot to do during COVID. I'm sure you decompressed and with the puppies. Is there any techniques you use to deal with stress and also the challenges of startup life?
Well, because we operate in rural areas, so not all of the areas, in fact, most of the areas don't have airports. So if you want to visit and do the field visit, you have two options, train or cars. Of course, train is difficult because when you arrive at the station and you want to go around, you need to, you know, find someone to help you. So it's not always happening. So I typically always do road trip. I drive my car myself, going around Java Island, spending, you know, 12 to 20 hours per week to drive and visiting the areas one by one. And somehow I really enjoy the time when I'm driving. Yeah, and then sometimes I hit the speed limit. Sometimes.
Definitely. I guess the last question we'll wrap up with, you know, and congrats in advance on your success. But I know it's gonna be a long, long way. I guess for me, it really is important to know where you're headed. You know, what is the measure of success look like? What you like to be remembered, and you know, what is this really end game for yourself and for the business?
Myself and also my colleagues in the founding team used to be trapped in the mindset of valuation and funding, and then getting the right partners in terms of investors and the senior employees that is joining the companies are much more important, because if we get the right partners, money will never be problems. There was a time before we raised Series A, we pretty much struggling in the financials, and many good people in the company are actually willing to not taking bonus and overwork. We only pay them after the Series A funding. So it means a lot for us. We don't want to lose them, even we have to lose one or two of them. But the rest, we try our best to retain and spend time as much as we can together in the company and doing the same thing, fighting for the same cause. And investors as well. We have board meeting every month, and then probably other investors will focus more on valuation. But in our discussion, we spend a lot of time in the impact and how to build a sustainable business, especially, you know, considering the later situation. So I think I feel so blessed because I work with investors and the team that have values aligned with my values, right? So I think that's more than valuation and fundraising. It doesn't mean we fundraising is not important. We still do fundraising. We will announce one end of this week, and we are preparing for the next one, but it's really not the measurement of success. And now it doesn't really bother me if I see other startups, especially in the similar sectors, there's a very big funding, or, you know, do multiple fundraising within a year, because at the end, I probably have a lot of funding in the bank, but I don't enjoy what I work, and I cannot really communicate with the team, or really cannot align with the investors. It doesn't mean anything.
Great advice. Is there any last bit of wisdom that you like to share to SEAF founders and everybody who's reading this that is maybe very unique, peculiar, or something that really just stuck with you? Because I definitely know that right now, you know, it's a good time to get back to fundamentals, stop with the valuation game, right? You know, raise if you already have, and build the company, but also maybe a personal advice, something somebody told you that really resonated with your life that you'd love to share to SEAF founders.
Well, as a caveat, I'm not a wise person, by the way. I do so many silly mistakes, but there is one quote that I really, that really inspired me, and it also aligned with what I shared earlier regarding how to set the right focus, not on the valuation fundraising. The quote says, "The joy is not in things; it is in us." And when I reflect it deeper, especially at those tough times before we wrap up our Series A, I come into conclusion, yes, I work hard in the startup, but the startup is not the only part or the only important segment of my life. I'm also a husband, I'm also a father, I'm also a son of a mom and a dad. So I think beyond startup, there are other things that can bring me joy. And beyond everything, like the quote say, the joy is not in things, it never in things, it never in valuation, it never in traction, it is in us.
That wraps up beautifully, and in 30 minutes, I feel like I've known you so much more. I think we have so much in common in travel and family and being more zen and grounded. You're definitely on a massive path to success, but with many challenges along the way, but also many support from SEAF founders, your investors, and people who are rooting for you. So, on behalf of the board and the community, we wish you much success, and we can't wait to see you in the next masterclass, founders coaching pause, forums, and really just feel your presence and energy and learn from and learn with you in our journey to become a better, more well-rounded founder. So Ryan, thank you so much again for the time.
Thank you, Aim. If I may, probably one piece of advice on traveling, especially for you, but all of the SEAF founders members, if you come to Indonesia, don't come to Bali, come to Jogja, where Dagangang headquarters is located. I'm going to prove you, Jogja is equally beautiful compared to Bali, and with half price.
I heard so much about it. We should definitely do one of the master classes there. On that note, we will definitely sync up on chat and then try to make that happen for real, not just lip service. So I hope we will have a session there. But
of course, happy to host all of you. Looking forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Well, I know you're busy, man. Have a great day and good luck on Friday. Looking forward to some good news.
Thank you, Aim. Have a good day. Stay safe. Thank you for having me.